Hey guys, sorry if you hear some music in the background. My son's watching some TV, but I thought I would just pop in here and talk a little bit, tell a little bit of a story about the time that my fiance spent weekends in jail. This was probably about 6 years ago when we first started dating. He actually was arrested and everything prior to us starting to date. And yeah, it was a crazy experience for me. Here I am talking as if I was the one that was in jail on the weekends. Even though it was just on the weekends, it was still brutal. I remember having to drive to the jails Friday evening after work and drop him off and pick him up super early on Monday morning and take him to work. And I bet you some people are like, what do you mean he was only in jail on weekends? How does that even make sense? Okay, well, I don't know if this is everywhere, but at least here where I live, if you have a full-time job, and I guess if you're only sentenced, I don't even want to quote, but if you're only sentenced to an X amount of time, and you have a full-time job, and you have a employer that's willing to sign off saying that you do work for him full-time, you are allowed to have a, what is called an intermittent sentence. I have no idea. I could even be saying that completely wrong. But anyway, so he had to do, I think it was 10, maybe more, maybe less, consecutive weekends at the jail. And this happened, there was a lot of guys there who had like DUIs, all different little minor things, you know, being caught with a little bit of weed, this, that, and the third. So, anyways, he would go, I would drop him off. And when he would come back out on Monday, it seemed like this dude did nothing but have a good sleep. Because, you know, it was the same guys that they would go into with every single weekend. They would line up, get searched, go into a cell. And the cells that they went into, he told me, they were pretty much for the GP, the general population, where the weekenders was the general population's confinement. So they would be stuffed 3-4 men into one confinement cell, where they would sleep one on a bunk, two on a bunk, well, one on a bunk, one on the top bunk, the second one on the bottom bunk, and then either one or two men on the floor. And man, my fiance says that they were all in there popping gravels, smoking cigarettes, and whatever was left over they would tuck and hide away for whoever from the general population who would get put into confinement. He also said that people from GP, Monday morning, they were all calling to go to confinement because they knew that the weekenders, anything that they had left over, they didn't want to be found when they were searched to leave. They didn't want that on them, so they knew that the weekenders would hide everything. So, man, there's so many different things that he told me. He said that, like, one time they were smoking and a CO opened up the door and it was already done. There was nothing that the guy could do. He could smell it. But he pulled them all out, threatened them all, he yelled at them all, but we just put them back in. This I thought was pretty crazy, you know, like, I don't understand, but he also said that, man, the things that they would make just for fun, you know, he used to bring me home all these tiny little dream catchers that he would peel off a fruit cup, and he would cut the bottom of the cup off so it was just that thick ring that the plastic lid sits on, and you would cut that and use your bed sheet. But how you would cut it is, I'm pretty sure he said that they used a piece of string. They would pull a piece of string really tight and rub the plastic. It's really thin plastic, so eventually that friction is gonna cut it. And so then they would take their bed sheet, a long piece of it, and kind of fasten it around it, all around the outside, loop it around nice and tight, then start spider weaving it around and turn it into like the coolest dream catchers that I've ever seen. Like, and he said that there was some guys in there who now they're serving weekends, but they had previously served time in general population and all that. They said there's guys in there that they dye the colors of the strings and they make them all different. And they find feathers and they find things that they dangle down. All of these really, really cool things. So that was interesting to me, you know, the things that you find out that they do to kind of fill up their time is fascinating. I find it really interesting. And so, anyways, he also told me that there was times where, like, he would see some guys that would come in there and they acted completely sober in that lineup, in that search, but as soon as that cell door would close behind them, they were fucked up. And then they would fall asleep on that Friday night, and they wouldn't really wake up until the Monday morning when it was time to go. And there they go, wipe their eyes, hey, there's a weekend gone. Like, it was crazy, the things that he would tell me. And it was funny. I remember the first weekend that he went in, I was so nervous and I was so sad. I'm thinking, man, all I watch is these TV shows. I've heard stories from my dad. I've heard stories, you know, you don't know until you know, you know? And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to go in there and something's going to happen. Oh, I'm petrified. Didn't sleep, didn't do anything, literally stayed inside our room, and that was it. Talked to his mom saying, oh my God, like, what is he going through right now? And this dude basically comes skipping out of the damn place on Monday morning, and I'm sitting there with bags underneath my eyes to my damn chin, haven't slept a wink, crying my eyes out, and this guy seemed like he had just spent a weekend at the Holiday Inn, even though it's sometimes called the Holiday Innis. That's where he was, Innis, in Ottawa. But no, it was pretty funny. He said that a lot of the guys that were in there were pretty down-to-earth guys. Like, I'm sure that a few of them were a little bit, you know, wouldn't be hanging out with them on the streets, but at least he wasn't sitting there locked up in a cell with some people that had to sleep with one eye open, you know. It's made me feel a bit better, at least. And it was funny, they found out little ways to, like, loop the system, you know. Like, they figured out after a few weekends there that it was how you lined up is how you got put into cells. So the first 3-4 guys, they would all get put into this one cell, and then 3-4 all the way down the line. So they eventually clicked up, and they would end up having their own little crews of friends that were in each of the cells, and they would be kiting each other, sending each other smokes. It sounded like it was ridiculous. It sounds like nobody's learning anything in this interval. I don't even want to, intermittent, I don't even know the name of it. But it sounds like they're not really learning that much. It's because the prison, I'm assuming, is that the jail is overcrowded, and so they're just kind of trying to figure out what to do without having to do that even more. Because, man, this jail down here, I tell you, it's disgusting. All the time you keep hearing things in the news about it. You keep seeing things in the paper about guys that have killed each other and just left for dead, and they do nothing about it. They sit there, the COs abuse them, don't feed them. They just sit there and they don't give a shit. They're sitting there being treated like less than dirt. Less than dirt. And meanwhile, there's weekenders that are sitting in there having the time of their lives. It's really nuts. It's crazy. The whole prison system, in my opinion, needs such a reform. It needs to have some people, they need to have like a group of people who have been in the system, been out and rehabilitated. They need people like that to go in and sit down and I don't know, have their words taken with not just a grain of salt, like just to actually sit down and listen to these people and the things that they've been through and the things that they've seen happen in these places. It makes no sense to me as to why this is continuing to happen and why it's getting worse every single day, every single minute. There's somebody dying somewhere in our prison system, and America is even worse. Like, I don't understand. There needs to be more people who are standing up and advocating for proper rights in the prison system. I feel like a lot of these people, men, women, you know, youth offenders, they're all being treated as if this is it. This one mistake that they have potentially made in their life, this has labeled them as being a piece of shit. And to me, that is not the way that it should be. I feel like if you have done something wrong, and if you are willing to sit down and accept the fact that you did something wrong, you should be given the fair opportunity to be able to right that wrong. To be able to say, I have changed and I want to go out and I want to do something for myself. It's not fair that there's people like my grandfather who served time in prison 30, 40 years ago For him to be a 65, 70-year-old man having trouble crossing the border to this day, that's not right. Like, you got some more stuff to be worrying about. No wonder why these countries are in deficit. Like, it's ridiculous. Oh, so you're gonna lock up a drug dealer, but it's okay for you, the government, to be a drug dealer? Please tell me how that makes sense to you. You're gonna sit there and complain that these inmates are taking up so much tax dollars? Well, why don't you stop locking people up for such petty, petty things? Makes no sense to me.